All right, let's journey back in time. We're going to an era when Europe was waking up from a long, long slumber. And in rediscovering its past, it completely invented the future. We're talking about the Renaissance, of course, an age of explosive creativity and thinking that didn't just change the world. Nope, it totally redefined what it even means to be human.
But you gotta wonder, how did that even happen? How does an entire continent make this incredible leap, almost overnight, from the medieval world into what we'd recognize as the modern era? That's the big question we're gonna dig into. So let's start with what this whole rebirth thing was really about.
Well, the word Renaissance literally means rebirth in French, and that's exactly what it was. For about 300 years, from the 14th to the 17th century, Europe went through this intense period of cultural, artistic, and economic revival. You can really think of it as the bridge, the thing that connected the Middle Ages to the world we know today.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this rebirth, we have to look at the world it came from, right? Let's quickly set the stage and see what things were like back then.
You've probably heard the time before the Renaissance called the Middle Ages, or, the more dramatic Dark Ages. And the stereotype is that it was this time of non-stop war, famine, plague, basically a time when all the brilliant ideas from ancient Greece and Rome were just forgotten. Now, it's true a lot of historians today would say that's a bit of an exaggeration, that the Dark Ages weren't quite so dark. But there is absolutely no doubt that what came next was a massive, profound shift in how people saw the world.
Look, a cultural explosion this big, it doesn't just happen out of nowhere, right? It needed a spark. Or actually, in this case, it was more like a whole series of sparks that came together to create the perfect storm for change.
So check this out. Within just a few decades, three massive things happened. Around 1440, you get Gutenberg inventing the printing press, which just changes communication forever. Then, in 1453, a huge political event, Constantinople falls. And just a few years later, in 1492, Columbus sails to the Americas, and boom, the known world basically doubles in size. Any one of these events would have been a game changer. But all three happening so close together, that lit the fuse. So the real story here is the domino effect. The printing press? It meant ideas could spread like wildfire. Suddenly, books and pamphlets were everywhere. The fall of Constantinople? That sent a flood of brilliant Greek scholars and all their ancient texts fleeing right into Europe. The Age of Discovery? It wasn't just about new land, it was about new perspectives, new goods, and a whole lot of new money. And that leads to the final piece. A new class of super wealthy merchants and bankers, like the famous Medici family, who had cash to burn and wanted to spend it on incredible art and culture. But here's the thing. All the technology and money in the world wouldn't have been enough. The real engine of the Renaissance, the thing that truly powered it, was a radical new way of thinking. And that philosophy was called humanism. This was the big idea, the intellectual core of the entire Renaissance. It was this revolutionary movement that basically said, hey, instead of focusing only on God and the afterlife, let's also focus on human beings. It was all about celebrating human potential, individual achievement, and what we can accomplish right here, right now on Earth. This quote really captures the spirit of it all. True nobility is not inherited, but is a treasure of the mind. I mean, what a powerful idea. It's saying that what makes you great isn't who your parents were, but what's in your head, your knowledge, your creativity, your achievements. And to find that greatness, humanists told everyone to look back to the incredible wisdom of the ancient Greeks and Romans. And when you put the two worldviews side by side, the difference is just, wow. It's like night and day. The medieval world was fundamentally God-centric. Life on Earth was seen as just a prelude to the afterlife. But the Renaissance? It flipped that completely. It became human-centric. It was about celebrating what we can do in this life and the amazing potential locked inside every single person. So this whole revolution needed a headquarters, right? And it found one in Florence, Italy. That city became the undisputed cultural epicenter. And a huge reason for that was money. Specifically, the money of powerful banking families like the Medicis.
They poured their fortunes into the arts, basically bankrolling geniuses like Michelangelo, and creating this intense competitive environment where incredible innovation was just bound to happen.
And happen it did. With all this new money and this totally new way of thinking, what you got was an absolute explosion of genius. I mean, in every field you can possibly imagine. Just look at the art. We're talking about titans whose names are still household words today. You had Leonardo da Vinci, the original Renaissance man, who was brilliant at basically everything. You had the incredible Michelangelo, who could carve the breathtaking David out of a block of marble and then turn around and paint the entire ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Then you have the sheer elegance of Raphael and the dreamlike beauty of Botticelli's Birth of Venus. It's just staggering. Okay, let's break down just how huge this change in art really was. First, the subject matter. Medieval art? Almost always religious. Renaissance art? Sure, still lots of religious scenes, but also mythology, portraits of regular people, you name it. Then look at the style. It goes from being flat and symbolic to being incredibly realistic and natural. And the technique? This is the real game changer. They mastered things like perspective, making a flat painting look three-dimensional, and using light and shadow to create drama and emotion that felt completely new.
And this new spirit of questioning everything didn't stop with art. It spilled over into every other field. In science, you get brave minds like Copernicus and Galileo who looked at the heavens and dared to say, hey, I think we've got this all wrong. The Earth isn't the center of everything. In politics, you get Machiavelli writing his famously ruthless guide to power, The Prince. And all the way up in England, you get William Shakespeare, who basically used theater to perform a deep dive into what makes us human.
You know, one of the coolest things about the Renaissance is how art and science weren't separate things. They were totally fused together. You had artists like Leonardo da Vinci who were also scientists, dissecting bodies so they could paint the human form with perfect accuracy. And you had architects using cutting-edge mathematics to build incredible structures, like the massive dome on Florence's cathedral. They were two sides of the same coin. But, as we all know, even the brightest golden ages have to come to an end. So, what happened? How did this incredible era finally fade away? And what did it leave behind? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was kind of a perfect storm in reverse. First, you had a series of invasions and wars that made Italy, the heart of the Renaissance, really unstable. Second, global trade routes started shifting away, which meant the Italian city-states weren't as rich as they used to be. Less money meant less funding for the arts. And finally, the Catholic Church launched its Counter-Reformation, which cracked down on new ideas, censoring thinkers, and putting a chill on the creative freedom that made the Renaissance possible. But here's the crucial part. Even though the Renaissance itself faded, its ideas were out there and they weren't going away. Its focus on asking questions, on the power of the individual, and on challenging authority, well, that became the direct foundation for everything that came next. The Scientific Revolution, the Protestant Reformation, and the Age of Enlightenment. It really did set the stage for the modern world. And that leaves us with one last, really interesting question to think about. Was the Renaissance this totally unique, lightning-in-a-bottle moment, a sudden explosion of genius? Or was it actually a much more gradual evolution, a slow burn that grew out of the Middle Ages, an era that we're now realizing was a lot more vibrant than we used to think? It's a debate that historians still have, and it's a great reminder that history is never quite as neat and tidy as we'd like it to be.